Mountain tragedy. A Melbourne woman dies climbing Mount Everest.
It's just such an incredibly sad loss to have lost her way before her time.
I'm Ian Henderson at a dairy in Dookie in the federal seat of Murray. Join me later for a special election broadcast looking at the issues that matter to rural Victorians.
Why almost half of the country's 18-year-olds aren't enrolled to vote.
What has failed with our democratic system so that we have so many missing voters?
And Greater Western Sydney cements its spot in the top four with a win over the Bulldogs. Hello and welcome to ABC News Sunday. I'm Tamara O'Dine.
To show up, they need to enrol before 8 o'clock tomorrow night. Stephanie Anderson, ABC News, Melbourne.
And now with the first in our series of ABC News Victoria election specials, let's go to Ian Henderson in Northern Victoria.
Welcome to Melbourne University's automated dairy at Dookie near Shepparton. These election specials are a little different from what you might be expecting because we won't actually be talking to any politicians. We figured you'd probably end up hearing more than enough from them over the next 6 weeks. Instead, we're talking to ordinary Victorians about what they want from their politicians. And tonight, we're taking a closer look at some of the issues facing rural Victoria. We may be the smallest mainland state, but we produce nearly a third of Australia's food and fibre exports. And as Helen Brown reports, what's happening here in the Goulburn Valley is a reflection of what's happening on the land across Victoria.
As the day comes to an end, farmers gather in a small Victorian town to share a meal and catch up.
We didn't realise how bad and how long and dry it was going to be. So we could see that a lot of the farmers were struggling with carting water. We had no feed and we were buying feed.
Keeping a check on the mental health of people who often work in isolation is now accepted as vitally important.
And I just thought to myself, God, how fragile we are. Look, just with the rain, everything's... And that's how it is, though. It's about the bloody rain.
Governments can't control the weather, but they can provide programs to help.
So often we go into these hard seasons and it takes so long, and I'd say that would be state and federal that need to get in there and react quicker.
Hello. Hello, you there?
Craig Winray is part of a large family cropping business which he says loses time and productivity because of weak internet and phone connections.
If we miss one from a grain broker or something, or we can't get up-to-date information, real-time information regarding, market prices and whatnot, it could be the difference between making that much money and missing out on a sale.
And this family business won't be installing more internet-based systems until a new federal government gives a clearer commitment to further funding telecommunications infrastructure.
It's not about better access at all, it's about having the same access that people in the city get.
The steady hum of tractors is a welcome sight after longed-for rain. Rural councils in Victoria say they need more funds to support these farming communities, currently receiving only 3 cents out of the tax dollar.
We would like to see the government, whichever party it's in, to give us some assistance in increasing that share for the 3%, because the 3% is not sustainable in the future, and we would like a review.
Victoria is to get funding as part of an inland rail project between Brisbane and Melbourne, but in reality receives a small slice of the national infrastructure budget.
I want to vote for a party or a government that comes up with a 50-year plan for water infrastructure or transport infrastructure based on rail.
Future plans are needed for a growing number of students enrolling at Melbourne University's farm campus at Dookie, where leaders are calling for the link between secondary school science education and food production to be strengthened.
I think people, probably underestimate the contribution of agriculture to the economy when you take the whole value chain into consideration, really.
Rural economies and farmer incomes have been bolstered by record beef prices. But fortunes have turned sharply for the dairy industry. Dairy farmers will be paid less for their milk, and many are facing further debt. Diminishing water resources are presenting another challenge. A lot's being said about the importance of agriculture to Australia's future. What farming communities would like this election is to be heard and for their value to the economy to be recognised through practical action.
If someone from the city, I don't know who, could just acknowledge how grateful we are for the farmers who grow the food, would go a long way to removing a bit of the stress and the unknown, I can tell you.
And a bit of federal election love would help too. Helen Brown, ABC News, Rural Victoria.
There's no better example of the struggles and triumphs of rural Victoria than the story of the Shepparton Preserving Company. From the farm to the plate, a single can like this represents the livelihoods of thousands of people. SPC Ardmona has been at the centre of political debates about corporate welfare, food dumping and support for local producers. Let's hear from a few of those who work at the factory and in the orchards.
I'm Matt Rogers. I'm the manufacturing manager at the Shepparton plant at SPC. I've lived and worked in rural Australia my whole life. With this new plant, we've been able to, I think, about double our capacity. A lot of the people power was really what helped us with our sales and the whole Buy Australian campaign, and people get, there's a lot of emotion attached to that. Making sure we still have an industry, a manufacturing industry. The primary producers, the farmers, and those guys, they're really struggling at the moment, so that's probably what would influence me.
Oh yeah, cucumber is all right. It's like maize dip, isn't it?
My name is Akhil and I am in research and development.
I feel aniseedy, it's like there's a licorice tone to it.
Political promises are made, they're broken, and it's too hard to keep up after a while. I think the opportunity to make the connection between a big city and a smaller city better, so having faster trains, any country which does not value agriculture, it starts losing out on one of the most basic of its food needs. I think it's an image issue sometimes. It's like, oh, agriculture, it's digging, it's dirt. But it's a bit more than that. You're actually genuinely helping another human being eat.
My name's Peter Hall. I enjoy growing fruit and I love living in the Goulburn Valley. Just in this election, we're already seeing the price of food and the issues related to food production in Australia becoming an issue. Some people think that primary producers are looking for handouts, and we're not actually looking for that. And sometimes even in the SPC debate a few years ago, people were talking about, oh, you always want handouts. Not at all. It's a combination of governments understanding that they need to create a level playing field for our product and consumers recognising the value of primary production in Australia. And fruit growing in this region has employed an awful lot of people. Yeah, I'm pleased that they rethought their position on the backpacker tax. Anything that impedes the ability of us to get labour to come and work in our orchards, we're pretty shy about. I consider the Afghani refugees locals now. They've been here 12, 15 years. They own homes in town. They're Australian citizens. Their kids are going to our schools and universities. Whilst it is, a very complex issue, I think, can we think beyond the present issue regarding boats and think about the sorts of issues that are occurring around the world and ask ourselves as Australians, can we help these people? For a government to win a country area's vote, it has to look at those issues. I mean it's the product we sell, getting that to market, its ability to grow our product, and that one of the major issues there is water, and it's the social life of our communities.
Well, life on the land certainly has its challenges. The weather, water and the ups and downs of prices. That's something Shepparton councillor Kevin Gunner-Ryan and his son Mark know all too well. Their forebears settled in Tatura more than 140 years ago. Kevin now runs a caravan park that hosts the army of backpackers who come each summer for the fruit picking, and Mark has taken over responsibility for the family dairy farm. We caught up with them on the farm earlier today. Well, Kevin Ryan, Sharman Stone's giving the game away after 20 years as a very popular local member. What's her successor have to do to earn your vote?
Well, there's no doubt the first thing she's going to have to do is get control back for our irrigators, in control of their water, because that is the lifeblood of this area. Now, if we cannot get control of water here within the Greater Goulburn Valley area, we have a long, long way to go to get agriculture to where we really want it, and that is to bring money into the Greater Goulburn Valley area, and more particularly into Victoria, because that's our revenue earning, and we have got to have control of water.
Now, you run a caravan park, you see a lot of backpackers there. You've got views on the backpacker tax as well?
Well, then there's no doubt that Kelly O'Dwyer announced the other day that they were going to hold up any decision for 6 months. To me, that is an absolute disgrace, because people are making their plans for next year now, and the tomato growers, the fruit people, the orchardists are all working out what they're going to do next year. Now, that is going to have a huge impact on the amount of people that come back into the Goulburn Valley if they do not scrub completely that 32%, because it is just unviable. And people are just going to say, our backpackers that we desperately need to have here are going to say, what's the use of coming there? And let's be quite frank, if we haven't got them here, there's no tomatoes picked, there's no fruit picked, there is no packing houses with people working in there. So yet again, another hit for farming.
So Mark, can you tell us why water management is such a hot button issue for farmers around here?
Well, in the past sort of 5 years, it's just become so uneven, where once upon a time, we'll charge so much for our water, and then when they unbundled all the water, now once they unbundled all the water, a lot of the water went out of this area, and it was purchased by people not in the farming game, and then they took us at our vulnerable moment, and now we've got to buy back that water temporary, and it's costing us so much money.
Can you give us an idea how much your water costs you a year?
Well, I'm only probably an average farmer here for this area, and my water is about $12,000 a year, and that's regardless whether I've got the water or not. Where beforehand you pay $12,000 and you get your 150, 200 megalitres of water, where now I still pay that money whether we get it during the drought. We got no allocation one year, 30% another year, 50% another year, and still had to pay that $12,000. And if you own that water outside of out of an irrigation area, all you're paying is about $6 or $7 per megalitre for that water.
So Mark, coming up to this election, what solid commitments do you want from the politicians on water?
I want them to get the water, and I want it to be a fair for everybody. So regardless whether you own a property and you own water, or you're in town and you own water, or your super fund owns water, we all pay the same amount of water, so it's a fair and even situation.
And in the meantime, a little bit more rain wouldn't go astray.
And it's coming, it's coming. We're going to have a good year.
Kevin and Mark Ryan there. Well, look, Victoria's dairy farmers produce 2/3 of Australia's milk, and as we all know, they're doing it pretty tough of late. With me now is the chairman of Farmers Support Group Murray Dairy, Rick Cross, who's also a farmer at Toolamba. Rick, distressing times for dairy farmers with the price cut. Can you tell our viewers, how is that distress manifesting itself? What are you seeing? What are you hearing?
Yeah, it certainly is a tough time at the moment, Ian. On top of unprecedented, it's been a tough year, but on top of that, with the price cut from two of our major manufacturers, we're seeing a lot of stress out there, and it's a very anxious time as all dairy farmers are contemplating their future in the industry.
Does that mean some may leave?
You will see some exiting the industry, but what we need to do at this point of time is make sure that dairy farmers react with the facts of their businesses and not out of emotion.
Now, Deputy Prime Minister Barnaby Joyce visited earlier this week asking what he could do for dairy farmers. What did you tell him?
Well, we sat down with Barnaby and primarily we said, look, we need some funding so that we can secure some one-on-one business analysis with every dairy farmer in Victoria, and that will enable sitting down and working out where their businesses sit at this particular point of time. But we also asked for some funding to increase the accessibility to mental health areas for dairy farmers and for social interaction. Now, it's very important at this point of time to keep the community together, because it's not just dairy farmers that are doing tough, it'll have flow-on effects to a lot of people.
a lot of communities too, I think.
Absolutely.
We've still got 6 weeks of the campaign to go. How do you expect this issue to play out? Are you expecting to hear any more, good news or bad news?
I think Barnaby came up here to see what he could do. So we've put together a list of priority that we'd like to see him address, and I'm sure he'll come back into the region. But we've also had some favourable announcements by the state government last week. And I think that'll benefit the farmers of the region.
And listen,
well.
if our viewers want to do something to help, what's the best thing they can do to help?
Look, I think as far as I'm concerned, just Australian dairy products. It's a great product. It tastes good and it's healthy for you. So increase and consume dairy.
Rick Ross, thank you very much.
Thank you, Wayne.
Well, there you have it, the long view and the short view from the bush as rural Victorians weigh up who'll get their vote on July the 2nd. Here in the seat of Murray, it's likely to be an arm wrestle between the Liberals and the Nationals. But we hope to have given you some insight tonight into the longer-term concerns that'll be exercising the minds of people on the land well beyond polling day. I'm Ian Henderson. We'll return you now to our South Bank studio.